Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point.
There's a new sheriff in town. And his name is Richardson Hitchins.
The upset kid has been upsetted. Liam Paro has been defeated by Richardson Hitchins by split decision. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But overall, Richardson Hitchins, congratulations on becoming a new IBF 140-pound champion. Now, since we got a new champion, we're going to talk about what this means for the division, what this means for boxing, et cetera, et cetera. But before we do that, let's go straight into the strategy and game plan. Now, if I had to give the strategy a grade on a scale of 1 to 10, the overall strategy between the two fighters and how it came together, honestly, I got to give it an 8. And the reason why is because, well, first, let me explain to you how I had this fight graded. I personally had a 116, 112, just like the two judges. Unlike the other one, who had a 117, 111, the Paro. I don't know how that makes any sense because the way I had it, I had the first 4 rounds going to Paro, yes. And then after that, it was a straight sweep from Richardson Hitchins from round 5 all the way to the end at round 12. I believe Richardson Hitchins won all of those rounds. He lost the first 4 rounds, and in those first 4 rounds, he looked pretty slow. He looked like he just wasn't on the same level as Liam Paro. Whenever Richardson Hitchins would throw that jab, Liam Paro would kind of slip his hand over that jab and throw a counter punch of his own. He would kind of throw it straight to the body, and Richardson Hitchins would just kind of get hit with those, and basically he was getting outpointed. And then it's crazy because his trainers got on him and they were like, "Hey, like, start being more aggressive, start being more physical, start applying the pressure." And it was interesting because that wasn't what me nor Breezy had as a game plan for Richardson Hitchins. Richardson Hitchins, the game plan that we had for him basically was I said use your jab. I also said target the body, and last but not least, use your footwork because I did believe that Richardson Hitchens was the quicker fighter, which he was. But in those first 4 rounds, he didn't look quick at all. So I was saying, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was really wrong about that. But it turns out that Richardson Hitchens proved me right. Hitchens was able to get faster as the rounds progressed. Liam Paro in those first 4 rounds looked great, and then all of a sudden, because Richardson Hitchens wasn't just a standing target, it's easy to hit somebody when they're a standing target. It's easy to get that body shot off. It's easy to, land those counter jabs if they're not moving. And all of a sudden, once they start using that footwork, it becomes a problem. And like I said, these two are mirror images of each other. Me and Breezy both said the same thing. These two are really alike. They're very, very similar. So it was all a matter of who was going to outbox who. And in this case, Richardson Hitchens did a lot of talking, but you know what? He backed it up. He was like, "I'm gonna outbox him, I'm gonna beat him, and I'm gonna become champion." I mean, there was no denying it for Richardson Hitchens. I mean, he started off very slow, but I mean, he really picked it up. Now, what I think Liam Paro did a good job of, I said target the body, which he did, but the problem with him at targeting the body is when he would target the body, he had like he did the same thing Errol Spence did against Crawford, which was he would kind of lean his head forward and he would duck a little too low, and with a longer, rangier fighter like Richardson Hitchens, that's a problem. I mean, you can't do that against somebody like Hitchens because he's just going to counterpunch you. And that's exactly what Richardson Hitchens did. From round 5 on, it was just a counterpunch fiesta. Liam Paro, he was trying to land that left after round 4 and he couldn't. I mean, he did a good job of landing it from round 1 to 4, but once Hitchens got the game plan and kind of figured out and cracked the code, that was it. What I liked about Hitchens was I really liked how Hitchens was able to use that jab. And we talked about how good of a jab we had, but we didn't talk about was his right hand. We didn't talk about that enough. And his right hand was really what was the game changer in this. And he kept on using the same 1-2 straight combo. He wasn't getting too greedy with the combos. He wasn't staying on the inside with Liam Paro. He was basically counterpunching Liam Paro. And when he wasn't counterpunching him, he was keeping him at bay with the 1-2. And Liam Paro, as the rounds progressed, he got a lot slower. It's almost like they switched. In rounds 1 through 4, it was Hitchens getting outboxed. It was Hitchens too slow. It was Hitchens not having enough power. And then after round 4, it's like they just switched. It's like Liam Paro was now the slower fighter. Liam Paro did not have as much power as Hitchens. Liam Paro was the one getting outboxed. So it was kind of weird. It was kind of like a Freaky Friday type thing, where they just switched bodies and they basically turned into the other person. It was like a mirror. So It was pretty interesting. But overall, the reason why I give the game plan overall an 8 is because Liam Paro had a plan. It just didn't get executed, and I thought it was a good plan. I thought it was a good plan. Try to push him up against the ropes, and I was working in the first 4 rounds, get him up against those ropes and basically pressure him. But the problem was, again, Richardson Hitchins, once he was able to move away from those ropes, once he was able to cut angles, once he was able to counterpunch, once he was able to let Liam Paro know that you're not going to win this fight the way you think you're going to win it, you're not going to be the aggressor. I'm going to make sure that if you're the aggressor, you're going to be a matador, or you're going to be the bull, I'm going to be the matador, and you're just going to keep on chasing that red flag. That's exactly what Richardson Hitchins did from round 5 all the way to 12. And I give him a lot of respect for that, because a lot of people were saying Richardson Hitchins was going to get knocked out. He was going to get beat. There was no way he was going to win that fight. Me personally, I knew Hitchins was going to win this fight. I thought majority decision. It was split decision. So it is what it is. But overall, I mean, I thought it was going to be in a cheap way. I thought Hitchins was going to hit him with like some 1-2s and then hold him. That wasn't what he was doing. Hitchins was just outboxing him the entire time. So to Hitchins, I apologize for that. You proved me wrong. Congratulations on winning the IBF belt. So I got to give him an 8 as far as strategy. Now, as far as the excitement of this fight, overall, this was an exciting fight, honestly. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. And the reason why I give it a 7.5 is because the way I looked at it was this was a battle of who was more technical, who was able to basically outbox the other. We knew it was going to be a boxing fight. We knew it was going to be a chess match, you know what I'm saying? Because both of these guys were good boxers, but the problem was who was going to be the better boxer. And now we know it's Hitchins. And that night Hitchins was the better boxer, and this night Hitchins was the better fighter. So I mean, credit to him. But overall, the reason why I think it was that exciting was because every single round it was like a chess match, you know what I'm saying? And you were watching it, you were looking at the little tiny things. You were looking at foot placement. You were looking at counters. You were looking at speed, reaction time, all that type of stuff. And um and as the fight progressed, you just saw Hitchens get more sharp, and you just started seeing him do a little bit more damage to Liam Paro. I mean, he had his eye swelled up a little bit. He put some left some marks on him. Paro, I think got him a little bit on the. I think it might have been the nose. I think Hitchens took a little bit of damage on the nose in those earlier rounds, but after those earlier rounds, I mean, Hitchens just did everything he could to win that fight. You know what I'm saying? He basically just outboxed him around that ring, and I feel like it was exciting to watch as enjoying it as the sweet science. That is the sweet science of boxing. That is how a fighter who has crafted the sweet science, that's how they're supposed to fight in that ring, exactly how Hitchens did. And I think that another reason why it was so exciting, I should say, is because you got to see how different the skills really were, or how better or how much levels above Hitchens was than Paro in this fight. Because let's be honest, I mean, Paro always seemed like the dominant fighter. He outbrawled Matias. He outboxed Montana Love. I mean, this guy was the upset kid, and now all of a sudden you're a favorite and you get upsetted, and you get upset by a guy that nobody thought was going to beat you. You know what I'm saying? But Hitchens went in there, and he shocked the world. He proved everybody wrong. He was like, I just upsetted the upset kid. And like I said, I was going to become champion. I can talk all that crap and I can back it up. And I thought it was really exciting watching the sweet science at that beautiful of a level today. So I'm going to give that a 7.5. And even Paro, there were moments where Paro, especially in those earlier rounds where he was showing the sweet science of boxing as well. So I got to give both of these guys a lot of credit. Um, both of these guys definitely put up a really, really exciting fight, and I can't take nothing away from them. Even Paro, keep your head up high. He didn't make any excuses, didn't take away the moment from Hitchens. He basically said he was the better fighter tonight. Congratulations to him, and he held it like a true champion. I'm hoping that he sticks to that. I'm hoping there's no excuses later on. Oh, he did this, he did that. I didn't get the gloves I wanted. Blah blah blah. I hope there's no little chirping. I hope there's no excuses 2 months, 3 months down the line. But as of right now, Paro's handling it like a champion. Handling it like a champion. So shout out to Liam Paro. Now, the stakes that were at hand. Overall stakes. Um, I'm gonna give it. It's tough, honestly. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 as well. And the reason why I give it a 7.5 is this, because you had the IBF championship on the line. Liam Paro, this is his first time defending the championship. He beat Matias for it, and he couldn't defend it successfully. Now for Hitchins, the reason why the stakes were so high is because now you got two fighters who are undefeated. You got two fighters who basically fight nearly identical, nearly the same. They got a little bit tiny differences, but other than that, they fight nearly the same. And you start asking yourself, well, who is better at this type of style fighting? Is it Hitchens or is it Parr? That was the question that we had. Who can outbox who? And the stakes here were you got the IBF championship on the line at 140 pounds, which is a very, very stacked division. And then you have two undefeated fighters, which means somebody is going to lose their O. And on top of that, both fighters were on Matchroom, which means who was going to be the guy that Matchroom was going to push forward. Whoever won this fight, Matchroom was going to push them to the moon. They were talking about Paro versus Cambosos in Australia, and I believe that fight could still happen. It's just not going to be for a belt. Now, all of a sudden, we went from Paro versus Cambosos to Hitchins versus Teofimo Lopez, possibly. We'll get to a little bit to that at the end. But when you talk about stakes, I mean, Richardson Hitchins now all of a sudden is considered, a threat in the 140-pound division. You know what I'm saying? Now he's a champion. Now you start pairing him up with guys like El Rayo and Teofimo Lopez, and you start pairing him up with those types of guys and Devin Haney at 140 pounds. And now you all of a sudden you can make some pretty interesting matchups. So as far as the stakes, I gotta give it a 7.5. Now Matchroom's got a new guy that they can, invest in and basically push to the moon. You know what I'm saying? I know Eddie Hearns is always trying to make the best fighters in Matchroom. He's always trying to make the best fights. Shout out to Eddie Hearns for that. But I think in this case, they were really a lot of people thought Liam Paro was going to win. I feel like in a way Matchroom was kind of pushing towards Liam Paro to win this fight. But when Hitchins won it, I feel like now all of a sudden they got some change in plans. So yeah, I mean overall I got to give it a 7.5. I think that the stakes were relatively decent in this fight. So yeah. Now last but not least, impact. How does this impact the division, the sport of boxing? Well, like I mentioned earlier, the division's got a new champion in Richardson Hitchins, and you can make so many matchups with him. And I believe because he is a talker, because he's not like Liam Paro, where he's just going to fight and let his fighting do the talking and he's humble. I feel like because he is a little bit of a trash talker and he can get under guys' skin, I feel like you can make a lot of good fights at 140 pounds, especially with other trash talkers like Teofimo Lopez, especially with other fighters who like to talk trash like Devin Haney in a way. I feel like you can make those fights. And then stylistically, he's a good style matchup for a lot of guys. You know what I'm saying? You get to see him versus El Rayo in a boxing fight. You get to see him versus Devin Haney, boxer versus boxer. You get to see him versus Teofimo Lopez, skill for skill. And overall, I think his style works with a lot of people. Just like Liam Paro. I'm not saying Liam Paro's didn't, but the difference was Liam Paro, I don't think can sell a fight like Richardson Hitchins can. And I feel like Matchroom was going to have to do a lot of work to get Hitchins up there and get his name in there. Um, or excuse me, they were going to have to do a lot of work to get Paro's name in there. But because Hitchins is now champion, I feel like Hitchins can just talk his way into a matchup, or basically kind of ruffle some feathers the way boxers do and kind of get something going. So as far as impact, I'm going to give that grade. I'm going to give it probably like I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I can see some good things happening. Yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I can definitely see some promising things happening in this division. And I feel like with the promising things happening in this division now that Hitchens is champion, I feel like there's a lot of ways we can go about this stuff. Now, as far as the grade, the grade for this fight is 7.88. Now, you might be asking me, where does that rank on the rankings? Now, I just did the ranking for Oscar Valdez and Emmanuel Navarrete too, so make sure y'all go check out that video when it gets uploaded. It's going to be uploaded before this one, so definitely check it out. But as far as Richardson Hitchins versus Liam Paro, funny enough, it is tied for the first place spot with Jesse Rodriguez and Pedro Guevara. In my opinion, I think this was a better fight than Pedro Guevara versus Jesse Rodriguez. I feel like this fight definitely was a lot more entertaining, even though it didn't end in the same fashion as Rodriguez versus Guevara. I feel like it was a lot more close. I feel like obviously this fight really wasn't close. I had a 116, 112. But I feel like this fight was a little bit more close than that, a lot more close than the Guevara versus Rodriguez fight. And I feel like it also had some more action in the sense of watching it from a boxer versus boxer perspective. It wasn't just two guys just staring at each other the whole fight and doing nothing. They tried to bring Paro tried to bring action. Hitchins tried to bring action. You know, they weren't just sitting there holding each other. They were basically trying to outbox each other throughout the whole fight. So overall, I think it should be higher than that, but that's where it's going to land on our list. So now, what do I want to see next for Hitchins? Well, the most reasonable matchup I would possibly say is going to be Hitchins versus Haney, in my opinion. I think that's the most reasonable matchup. Haney's done a lot of work with his zone. I feel like he wouldn't have a problem working with somebody like Eddie Hearn. You know what I'm saying? Eddie Hearn, I think, really does like Devin Haney a lot. And I feel like that's the most reasonable matchup now. It's all about whether or not Devin Haney wants to fight somebody like Richardson Hitchins, or does he want to wait? Because as of right now, it just seems like Haney is waiting for Ryan Garcia to get off a suspension. You know, there's obviously been speculation about him versus Teofimo. I don't think that fight's gonna happen for quite some time. Now Richardson Hitchins, he said that he wanted to fight Teofimo Lopez, and that's a good fight to have at 140. I think personally, if you're calling out anybody at 140, I think Teofimo Lopez is the name. Here's the problem with that. Teofimo Lopez has stated time and time again, after his fight with Kambosos, he does not trust matchroom boxing. He doesn't. He has stated it many, many times. He felt like he won that fight with Kambosos. Now, y'all can disagree, all you guys like, you know what I'm saying? It's not the point of this. It's not the point that I'm trying to make. The point is Teofimo felt like he was robbed in that fight. And because he felt like he was robbed in that fight, he doesn't want to go back and do business with Matchroom. Now, it's tough because it most likely means we're not going to see a Teofimo against Hitchins unless it's all on his terms. And knowing Eddie Hearns isn't going to go for that. I feel like Eddie Hearn is going to want to kind of help his fighter in some type of way when it comes to negotiations. I feel like Teofimo Lopez is looking at bigger things as well. He said that his plan, I read a thing on social media on Instagram, and it was a quote by him, is his plan is basically Boots, Trevante, and then we end it with Terrence Crawford. Now, do I think any of those three fights are going to happen? Most likely not, but that's what he's chasing. He's chasing the great fights, and I don't think he's going to stop that for Richardson Hitchins. And if he doesn't get those great fights, I think it's going to be another fight like a Steve Claggett or a Jermaine Ortiz or a Sandor Martin, you know, like those types of fights. So I don't think that fight's going to happen. I would like to see that fight happen out of all of the champions at 140. As far as El Rayo, I don't know who El Rayo. I think should give that rematch to Pitbull Cruz, and I think he should kind of fight Ryan Garcia. That's for a different topic for a different time. What's next for El Rayo? But as far as Hitchins, I would like to see Hitchins versus Haney. I feel like that's a good fight for Haney to come back to. Hitchins right now has some good momentum, so that's a fight that could possibly take him to the next level. Him, if he beats Haney, he's able to say, you know, hey, I beat Devin Haney, and put himself on that level with all those other guys, possibly put himself top 10 pound for pound, you know? So I feel like that would be the best fight for him right now and the most reasonable fight for him right now. But I understand why he wants Teofimo Lopez. Both of them are from New York. You could definitely make it happen in Madison Square Garden. I think it would be a really, really good event. It would be a relatively big event, decent size. You know, I think they would make some decent money off of it, but I don't think Teofimo has any interest in fighting Richardson Hitchins, especially working with Matchroom Boxing. So I'm probably going to have to go with Hitchins versus Haney on this one. And with that being said, again, like I always say, only time will tell. You know, we got to wait to see what these fighters do. And I'm going to be honest, boxing sometimes is like a reality TV show. You just never know what's going to happen. It's filled with all sorts of drama, you know, so I always feel like everything's unpredictable in boxing, and all of a sudden it turns into a whole soap opera. So we're just gonna have to see how this soap opera unfolds. But with that being said, Richardson Hitchins is your new IBF 140-pound champion. Congratulations to him. Liam Paro, keep your head up. You know, you are still a great fighter, definitely a good fighter. I feel like he'll pick up, he'll lift his head up and he'll bounce back. I feel like we're gonna see Liam Paro as a champion again. Maybe they'll do the rematch, who knows? But overall, with that being said, I think it's time to tune out, tune off. Same thing. You know, y'all already know the difference. It's almost 2 a.m. I'm pretty tired. So y'all know what it is. Make sure y'all check out the social medias, check out the podcast. Make sure y'all just check out everything The Puncher's Point. And last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with The Puncher's Point. What's up, y'all? If y'all love this episode, make sure y'all subscribe. You hit that notifications button, and also take a look at the recent episodes that we made before this. Make sure y'all stay on point with The Puncher's Point.